big open field.
The one girl, Lucy Allen,
They're
her
everywhere.
married,
There's about enough everywhere.
great
Would be
grandfather
okay if
hit
the road
big
was better.
basketball.
Yeah, yeah.
The road is not
And-
equipped, and
Yeah,
so
They
somebody
were- that
told
was
me
my
there is something
grandfather's
called a
And so there was a
information,
bunch
road
of
information
kings
thing.
Oh, on the
there.
internet?
I couldn't find it.
And,
Yeah, you sometimes have to dig
they
real
had-
long,
yeah,
deep and hard.
That's when I stopped to find
my
out.
father, he was the 11th child,
I am good.
and they had 8 brothers.
So what are you doing now?
Hey
You
there.
retired, or you still?
Appreciate you helping me. I know it takes you out of your way a little
Monday
bit, but
through-
I ain't worried about it.
Officially, it's supposed to be Monday through Wednesday, doing taxes and accounting.
Also,
Yeah, but I don't know how long, much longer that's going to go on for. It's impeding on my other things.
he was Albert Samuel's dad, right?
Yeah,
It's very busy.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
And I might get
It's just very busy.
Johnny.
So how have you been,
Tina? John.
I'm good. You don't have to worry about filling out the, email.
your
fee.
pen,
I've got the-
your pen died too.
My pen died.
Uh-oh, mine fell out somewhere in the car.
We're driving the
So you just want names?
Well, they had a speed trap.
Did anybody find the goals and objectives we had?
Speed
Or
trap.
the, I say we, the HRAP had at one time?
Big book?
No, not the big book. It was I think 2 pages, wasn't it?
Oh, we need one on 44.
I don't know.
You need a pen? Yeah.
What?
I don't know.
Oh, you did know. You must be having one of those moments.
I don't think it was updated.
No, of course not.
I have this.
I
thing.
thought that's what we could
This-
do. Update it.
This is gigantic. This is
No,
what
no.
we need.
You gotta start somewhere, right?
I read it.
Yeah,
To
we're
read
starting
it.
from the base. We're starting from the bottom. Clean slate, we were on hold for, hiatus
So
for
long.
Almost 2 years.
almost 2 years, so.
Yeah, but what did we know, how do we know what we did in the past and, so that
there's
we
a
don't
thing-
have to repeat
There's a
it?
thing in there.
Oh, good.
It talks about, our,
Accomplishments.
Oh, it's really?
I have, within your packet,
Which page?
there's a list of accomplishments
Yeah,
towards the
by
back. I'm gonna
April.
review.
God.
okay, so hold on a second, let's see. Review
That's the,
of the, historical will be before the, so, I mean, the, will be in between.
because I know the certified local government was completed. That's an accomplishment.
We-
There we go.
The accomplishments was last updated in 2016.
Oh, yes, that's what it
From
was, yes.
2009 to 2016.
We got it, Candy.
So you were on this board before?
Only a step.
I have mine on my desk, actually. We got 1 minute? I'll go grab it. If I need well, we'll need to reference it today.
I can go grab it if you want. I mean, I don't think we're gonna need it.
I don't think we'll need to
You've got so
reference it
much
today.
That you're gonna be reviewing and.
Just to know that it's here.
Killing myself.
Postpone indefinitely. Making Adam disappear. That's funny. We were just out in Vegas and we went and saw the David Copperfield. But my wife was disappointed. He didn't make me disappear, so.
He's still going?
Huh?
Oh,
He's
yeah.
still going?
Yeah, yeah. It's a pretty small venue. And, he kept asking for volunteers and my wife had her hands.
Then I have your email.
Okay.
Remember Doug Henning?
What?
Doug Henning was the big magician before
Oh,
Copperfield.
Houdini, you mean?
No, Henning,
Henning.
Doug Henning.
Oh, I thought you meant Houdini.
Yeah, I remember that.
He had a big,
Yeah,
big
yes,
afro,
yes, I remember him.
bright outfits.
Did you notice the Davis property there, fairgrounds used to be on the Pinto?
So you live over
Some of the underbrush and you can
Ron
actually see
Carville is in,
where
sent
that,
out a
this
mouthful
guy
for
from
another one from
It'll be like a test.
Problem, right? Called the Interstate Management. And they don't keep in touch with you.
Right.
They haven't signed up, but then they return.
Is that part of it?
You ready?
And so,
All right, everybody, I'm getting ready to call this meeting to order of the Citrus County Historical Resources Advisory Board. And before we do anything else, we will have our pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
so good.
Yes.
Okay, we'll start with the roll call. Here. And who does?
Walter Bud Osborne,
Here?
Paul Granin,
Here.
Candace Bellamy McPherson,
Present.
Catherine Turner Thompson,
Here.
Cynthia King,
Here.
Melissa Bowermaster, Lynn Turk,
Here,
Mark Hammer,
Here.
Lindsay Gilbert, Gina Eason, here. We have a quorum.
Okay. Well, we have the review of parliamentary procedures.
That's me.
Be Mr. Hammer.
I'm gonna stand up here because I'd rather stand up here than y'all can look at me and not trip your necks.
Well, that's nice, thank you.
Thank you.
So if you can't hear me, let me know because it's crowded. So essentially what I want to do is review some of the stuff that we should have reviewed in our last meeting, but given the fact that there were things on the agenda to be discussed that were, yes, ma'am.
Before
The
we
minutes.
start there, I notice I did not include
Minutes.
approval of the minutes because we did some rearranging. So could we go back and review the minutes and get the motion and approval of the minutes as presented? Or any changes that might need to be,
Okay, that's not on here, but we're getting ready to do it.
yes. That's the part that I overlooked, so my apologies.
Okay, what was the date of that meeting?
The April 1st,
April 1st?
2024, and the copy of the minutes was emailed to you, as well as a copy of the minutes are in your hard copy packet.
Okay,
I move we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
One moment, please. In reference to the minutes, I feel it's only appropriate that we hold a short discussion in reference to the minutes. And verify from Ms. Turner Thompson, after we notify Ms. Turner Thompson that she's included in the minutes under nomination appointment for vice chairman. I think she should be made aware of this situation.
She was prior to us
Yes.
starting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
do you have an agreement on that?
Yes, as long as I'm able and willing and alive.
Okay, I just thought that we should have that in,
Thank you, thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Grannon.
okay, so we have a nomination of our, to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
Yes.
And we have a second? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. Let's move forward.
That was C.5. Moving forward to D.
Huh?
That was C.5,
Okay,
so now we're gonna do D.
okay.
So, last meeting, we had quite a few things that were coming before the board for discussion. So those kind of took precedent. But given that essentially this is a new board, we are starting fresh. It has been about 2 years since the board has met. I believe we should review some things, just so that we're all on the same page, everything's in the open, and we can have an open discussion and get all of this cleared before we move forward again, and we can make the appropriate decisions as we move forward. I will get to that later on in my discussion, because we have to take a step back on one of the things we did last week. So, we're going to start with the parliamentary procedure, basically Robert's Rule of Order, which is the outline in which most meetings are conducted. There is a parliamentary procedure handout within your agenda. If anyone wants to read over it, anyone wants to read it, anyone wants to take a minute and discuss it, this is our opportunity. It gives us the procedures as to which, or the order as to which things are to move forward in the meeting, how it's called, our votes, general verbiage.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes.
Here on the parliamentary procedures, the second line, it says in Roselle. Is that an alternative to Robert's Rules of Order? I don't know anything about Roselle.
I don't know Roselle.
Does anybody know? Okay.
I think it's up by Central now.
Yeah?
I
Maybe.
don't know. I haven't heard, I heard Roberts.
This
I know
parliamentary
it was,
procedure
That's right there.
page after the minutes. It
It's-
looks,
It appears that, okay, the original motion becomes changed with each addition of an amendment. Both votes on each motion are to be taken in reverse order in Roselle. If an amendment is made, I think is where the Roselle comes into play,
what is Roselle?
where you go in reverse order.
I don't quite understand.
And I would have
Votes
to,
on motion are to be taken, you mean you go down each person in reverse order? Okay,
I believe
that's
so,
really,
but let's see what Google says.
strange.
I was gonna say Google.
Yeah. I think you're right, in reverse.
Well, that's getting looked up. If you go to the second page of parliamentary procedures, it's, the top header is basic meeting procedures, 5 steps. This essentially discusses the starting of the meeting, the debates, the amending process. The basic steps for moving through a meeting. I wouldn't be so interested in the motion guide for minute taking. But the member guide to motion, it helped me because I didn't understand what some of the terms were. I don't think we're gonna be getting into a lot of these terms. The discussions or conversations that we hold are not really in-depth conversations where it's debating and back and forth, point, counterpoint. But it's more so just that everybody's familiar with the due process and the organization of which the meetings are to move forward or move accordingly. And again, follow up with that, a quick guide to parliamentary procedures, the same thing. It's just an outline or overlay of in which the meetings can proceed through the Robert's Rule of Order. this front page is just a discussion of the difference between the Roselle and the Roberts Rule.
I'm not really finding anything on Roselle. I just-
Well, if you're going by Robert's Rules of Order as your resources note at the end of that parliamentary procedures, and then it refers to Roselle in that first paragraph, and then it says, mentions it again there in,
Number 2.
a little further down about making a motion. And then on the second page, it talks about Roselle.
Number 1, number 2.
Are these two different parliamentary procedure?
I believe so. We're gonna follow more along the lines of Robert's Rule of Order, and I think that this almost looks like this one could have been left out. I'd almost say overlook the parliamentary procedures top page, because it seems to be getting a little confusing. It looks like it's discussing two different formats, Roselle and Robert's Order, is what it looks like, this front pages.
What it seems like to me, which is not a good system,
No, I'd say I almost tossed that
to
one.
use two different, and then to just throw in Roselle with no explanation of what it is, it's not good form.
No, the quick guide to parliamentary procedure is a little more straightforward.
Sounds like good comedian
And
material.
actually, it has this one here, the quick guide to parliamentary procedures, a little better of an outline.
Yeah,
The box to the top right, order of business, would basically be the layout of how the meeting would be structured and run. I'll throw that one away.
no, that makes a lot more sense right there,
Throw away that other one, I'm sorry.
order of business.
It says in the resources that this is Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, and in brief, John Erickson, his notes and comments on Robert's Rules of Order. So he probably refers comparing Robert's Rules of Order to the other.
It sounds like that was a comparison, that's, discard that one, I apologize. Unnecessary, it's confusing. And the whole point of this conversation is not to be confusing, so failed on that one. Yeah, just as a general reference, we use the quick guide to parliamentary procedures. It has a better, much better outlay and structure to it. I think most of us are familiar with that structure anyway. Is there any questions on any of that?
No question.
I just think it's something we all need to sort of look over and read. You know, it's about time. to
Yeah, I think it's just
get
use
accustomed to
use
it.
that as a reference more so.
And the member guide to motions that is in that packet,
That's good.
that's still good. The incidental and privileged
The
motion.
second pages,
Mhm.
page 3 and page 4.
I can actually print out, Robert's Rule parliamentary procedures and not a,
Are these rigidly
notes and
adhered to?
comments.
Are these rigidly adhered to,
No,
these rules?
he's the adherer.
Oh, you're the man.
Chairman would be the person to be adhered to.
Okay, well.
These are guidelines.
Yeah, well, if we,
On how to conduct that.
yeah. So are we finished with the review?
Which review? D?
D?
I'm done
D.
with D.
Okay.
I beat that one up, sorry.
Let's go to E.
We're gonna go to E, something a little more interesting. Okay, so the criteria for listing, and this is where we're taking a step back, because last meeting, we had an application for a historic preservation, local historic preservation request. Not that one, not this one. If you go to the, did I print it? There it is. Historic preservation, chapter 101, Article 1 in general. I think it's 3 or 4 pages. If you go to page 1, 2, 3, page 3, about midway down, it'd be under section 101-5, Historic Site Structure and District Designation Procedure. And you drop down to item C, designation of historic structure and historic sites, review and adoption procedures. Has everyone located this? This is where we're stepping back. This is where I'm stepping back. Y'all gotta step with me. Historic Resources Advisory Board. The advisory board may, after notice and public hearing, recommend certain properties to be designated as historic structures or historic sites. At least 10 days prior to such hearing, the advisory board shall notify the owners of record as listed in the office of the property appraiser who are owners of the property in whole or part within 500 feet of the boundaries of the property affected. So, all properties within 500 feet of the historic property going up for a designation must be notified of a designation request, in which we did not do yet. That's where we're stepping back. That's where I'm stepping back. Y'all gotta step with me again.
Okay.
So we have to do our due process. We have to do the mailings to all of the affected property owners within 500 feet of this property to see, or to give them notification as required by statute that there's an application going before the county commission.
And you're talking about the sign that we
Yes, sir.
did up on Withlacoochee River for
Yes.
Jesse Prescott Smith?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. I don't understand.
So before you is the historic preservation ordinance as to how it's to be followed and what criteria things can be submitted under, how it's to be submitted, and the actions of that submittal. I don't know if this is something y'all would like to read again at your leisure, or take time to read it now. If you read it now, ask questions. Read it later, ask questions. But if you have questions, please ask the question.
Okay,
So, is this saying that a historic sign would be considered a historic structure also, or no?
That is something we'll clarify because we'll revisit it all again.
Okay,
Do we want the site? Do we want the sign?
Yeah.
Do we want the act of what has taken place within that property?
right.
I would almost recommend that one particular site and property in which the main office was located and the sign was on, and the sign could be a representative of, as opposed to if the sign was withheld in local or local historic preservation, then it would just be that one particular item. If we did the properties, then it could be that area and location itself that was significant, not just the sign. The sign could be included with the property. But again, that'd be a decision for the board. I believe the property would be better suited than just the sign.
okay, so we just approved the sign, correct, and not the property?
It was the property because we're gonna include the
Oh, okay.
identification of the properties with
All right.
that.
What did the owner request?
The location, I believe, the location itself,
Restore and renovate the current sign.
and then renovate the current sign.
Okay.
Questions, comments,
Yeah.
remarks?
We have to move on to the,
So that's-
F.
D. E. Oh, I'm sorry. If you follow along with that, is a criteria of listing, which gives an overlay as to what criterias could be used. On the back, it lists 7, but it's very vague. And then I have the Davis Family Heritage, which is to be used basically just as an example of the differences between the local estate and a national registry and the process and procedures that are involved with the differences. And that is the front and back on that page. And then to finish up with E before moving to F, still under the criteria for historical preservation. This is not per se directly related to historical preservation, but it is the accomplishments of the advisory board. It was created in 2006. This picks up in 2009 to 2016 what has been accomplished and what led us to where we are now with the historic preservation ordinance. It has not been updated since 2016. I believe 2015 or 2016 is when I came on the board, and 2017 is when I was chosen as chairman. I sat at that position until 2021 when I had to step off the board because of my position with the county. But that's what led me back up here in front of y'all, because I have some information and knowledge about what's occurring with all of this stuff. I'm trying to utilize it. But these are the accomplishments of the board that came before us. If you notice, there is a big void between 2016 and today. It'd be nice to fill in some of the accomplishments. I will do what I can to bring it to the current. But I believe in an upcoming meeting, we need to take time to sit down and calculate our goals for the future within the next 2 years, and then also a 5-year goal. A 1-year, 2-year, and 5-year goal is what I would like to see brought forward, with the 1-year goal emphasizing a grant to the state to update our historical survey. There is an application that could be submitted for the grant for the state to help us update our historical survey. We have a master plan that was a thesis study from a college student that occurred in 2011.
I don't recall that. I just remember the original one in 87 or 89 by Murray Laurie from Gainesville, and she was a professional historic preservation historian.
Maybe that's the one.
Yeah, I don't.
I think when the county first put that Department of GPS in.
GIS.
Yeah, GIS, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
When they first put that in, the fella that was working on it was one of the county staffers in the meeting, and they did some of the
I can't remember his name.
recognition of some of the historic properties.
Yeah,
They did some, but it's not completely updated.
yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, it's a
Skyview Ranch is still listed on that.
Right, right.
That's where Terra Vista is now. But that would be part of the updating. There's a lot of things that have been lost to development. And I think there's 1,345 items or something on that list. It was 1,300 plus. But we don't have 1,300 plus anymore, and some of it was arbitrary. It'd be nice to get a more comprehensive list to actual sites that we could do something with, or that still exists or doesn't exist. I mean,
Right.
Etna could be taken off of it as well.
Yeah, I remember the discussion about, some of the homes in Beverly Hills now are 50 years old or so, and they wouldn't really qualify to be on that. So they were trying to figure out how to go about, putting the real historical things in.
Right. The reason that Beverly Hills would not fit was because it would have to be a distinctive issue within that, such as one of the first model homes, the first sales office, but all of the houses in there indiscriminately are not unique in the manner in which that they would qualify. There are houses in Homosassa that were built in 1922, 1923, that were part of the sales models for the original land boom prior to the downturn of the Great Depression. Those houses would qualify
Right,
for historic preservation
right.
because they are unique in their features and they're limited versus what we have in Beverly Hills, which is massive quantities. So that's the differences between the two of them.
But I agree that, you know, I'm sure it needs to be updated, what we have, the information, what we have needs to be updated, so.
And the state has a grant program for that, and it is one of the requirements that the state asks us to do is have an updated survey,
How do we go about,
filling out the grant.
yeah,
The grant window is closed for this year. That's why I said that would be a great one-year goal for us to look at.
right.
I can try and research, not try, but I will research the
Is it
requirements
through-
for the
Is
grant.
it through the State Department?
It'd be through the State Department, yes, and National Park Service as well. Yes, ma'am.
The 1,300 or so sites that you refer to, that includes archaeological sites, it includes sites in Crystal River, sites in Inverness, which we have no say over. And so it's not as large a list as one might think. And I think what Candy's referring to was something that one of the GS people first came up with, and it was like 100 sites, I think, of some of the more significant historical
Correct.
sites, because I remember sitting down with him and going through some of those sites.
Some we were concerned about being public, actually.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the archaeology sites, and we don't, you know, that's not part of what we do.
Some of those are like, the Chassahowiska River has quite a few of them. Some of the boats that are sunk in there. I
How do
can't-
we do that on county-owned land?
How do we do what?
Give it a historic designation? Do we have to talk to the county?
We are the county.
Huh? We are the county.
We are the county.
Good.
One moment. Because we already have some, I'm not gonna bother trying to read this thing. The sidewalk, Homosassa. Around the corner from Oxbow Park, the fire department.
Yep.
There's a 6-foot wide stretch of sidewalk, which was one of the first county sidewalks in Florida. And that already has a designation and a placard. And that's on county property.
Okay.
So it's possible.
Well, I was just asking because I was thinking about in Lecanto, Morrison Pond. You know, that's where everybody came, when you came from Hernando to Homosassa, to any place, everybody had to stop there and get water. It was just in the center of the county. The county owns it now. So, John Pike Morrison, I mean, could that be designated? And
Where is it?
would that have to be outside this? Somebody else would have to come up and propose it?
It's privately owned, right?
Huh?
It's privately owned, right?
No,
No, okay.
the county owns it.
Okay.
Where,
That's-
excuse me, but where is it?
They can't
Yeah, no, I know, but where?
Well, if you, when you get down to the intersection of 491 and 44, and you go across, you'll see where they skint all the land back, every living thing, except for one little green area down there at the bottom, and that's Morrison Pond.
Oh, okay.
It's home,
Thank you.
at one time it had 7 springs in it. And then relatives of mine decided at the turn of the century, it would be nice to put some water lilies in there and a few other things, and they introduced it. So it became tangled up, but there's plenty of water still there, and everybody came and watered their horses, because back then, you fenced your house, it was all open range.
Right.
And that's where, only place that they had a water source, so. And you said we own it?
That would be under the historical preservation,
Oh, okay.
local registry, historic structure and district designation criteria fall underneath that. And somebody bring it before the board. But I think that it would be pertinent if we set up long-term goal strategies,
Okay.
try and identify some, see what we can do. Another point of discussion I had prior was the underwater viewing bowl at Homosassa Springs State Park. But I think that they actually, during our hiatus, I believe that they enacted that. They already took action on that. I need to get further information from Ms. Spratt about that. But I think that they had already initiated doing that. The benefit to that is if they get the designation, because it is an environment or educational facility of sorts, could be listed under an educational facility, it could receive grants to help replace the windows that are hard to see out of now.
Right.
But that's the benefit of the CLG and the grant program and the benefits that come from that. So long-term goal strategy is to identify things that may be able to benefit. The Hernando School already has a designation, I believe. But try and get something rolling with that again, if possible. Sunshine Law, that's E. Anyway, on to F. Sunshine Law.
Before you go on.
Before we go there.
Yeah. You're talking about setting goals for the next couple of years. What process do we need to do that? Are we gonna communicate with each other by email? Not each other, but to the county with our ideas for goals?
Bring them here.
We would-
Bring them here next meeting?
We could
Okay.
make the next meeting a goal-setting meeting, and that would be specifically what we
So
spoke
we-
about.
We think about it a couple of months and bring it back to the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, yes.
And we'll throw it out there and compile it and try and pick what the board feels is priority items, what we feel we could accomplish in the short term, and what may be a long term.
Okay. All right.
Any questions?
Is
Yes,
there,
ma'am.
yes, is there any criteria or set for the state granting? Do they ask for anything in particular? Like we were talking about a
I'll
watering pond?
I'll
versus a
research that
building?
information and bring it back at the next meeting as far as what the grants. But it's, with the state, I'm gonna focus, my time is to individual individual pieces at first, so I would focus, for myself, I would focus my time on the grant for the board's direction. But if the board directed to focus on the survey, I would focus on the survey. And not several things at once, but I would focus my time on the one item at a time.
But they don't say like, what is the grant specific to anything in
It
particular?
would be, any grant is specific to any item.
So
Whatever's written out on the application for the grant, that's specific to where that grant's gonna be earmarked for.
Okay, so you could have one for that lake.
You're not sharing it.
I'm sorry?
You're not sharing it. Grant is not shared between other
No,
items,
no,
between
I
other
don't mean
items.
that. I mean, like, if we wrote a grant,
If you wanted a grant for the pond, you would write a grant for the pond,
pond,
and that
just-
grant would only be good for that pond. So the criteria for that grant, if you've ever worked with any grants, would be,
just specific to that particular thing.
yes.
But see, I don't know if I don't think that a pond is gonna receive grant money.
Yeah.
I don't know where it would benefit from
That's
grant
too
money.
specific, then,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
Which,
And
right,
what is-
it's, there's nothing to rehab, there's nothing to
Yeah.
reconstruct,
Or
there's
preserve.
nothing to preserve, we can get a sign.
Okay.
But whereas the underwater fishbowl, that's educational.
Right.
It has deteriorated glass where now you can't see
Right,
through to the
yeah.
fish. So
Yeah.
that's a specific item that would benefit directly from the state's grant money, if they decide.
Okay, thank you.
And there's accountability too for the grant funds. There's reports afterwards that they make sure
Yes.
that those
And how
funds
you
are
spend the
used for
money.
what you requested and for what.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is, for the small matching grants for the survey, when you apply for those, and if you are awarded, do they still not require a cash match? That was always my understanding.
I'm not sure with the survey if it's gonna be a cash match or not. I don't think the survey is a cash match for
Yeah.
the survey,
Right,
but other projects they are.
yeah.
And I said, and I'm sorry I'm directing this way because, Ms. McPherson is with the Hernando Historic School. And they have been preserving that and working to preserve that for many, many years. She's very familiar with it because they have to match their grant funding, and that's where a lot of their fundraising money would go to when you had the fundraisers with the cattle drives and such. So Ms. McPherson is familiar with the aspect of the grants, the shared funding and such.
And it's changed a lot too.
Yeah.
You
It
have
cha-
to
it-
match
You know,
one
it
to one.
changes just like your new people coming in positions, things change. You always have to keep up with what's happening.
Evolving cycle.
Any questions about historic stuff?
I do have one. Would your grant designate whether, you say it, I was thinking of a park around this pond. Would that have to be state approved? Well, we have county parks.
The
How would,
the state wouldn't build the park.
the state won't, but what about the county? Make, benches or whatever around the,
When I spoke to
Park.
Mr. Eastman 3 or 4 years ago and asked him why he cut down all the trees, he said it wasn't me, but they had to do it. He had explained that in the long-term design features of that property, that a park is incorporated into the long-term design features.
it's not incorporated, what?
They've incorporated the park into the long-term design features. When they redesigned all of that property and reshaped it all, there is a park laid out for that property.
They
For-
were gonna preserve the old house that was down there, which was John Pike Morrison's house. And when they came to us, all the landowners, they presented this great big thing that was gonna be a park, there's gonna be a walkway around the pond. They were gonna do all of this.
Yeah,
And then
that's-
the funding stopped and they just skipped everything.
Commissioners changed.
Yeah.
Times changed. The times have changed.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
But that would be private or county, not a state funding.
But
Correct.
that would also probably be in a capital improvement project after the widening of 491. So it could be in the 5-year CIP or the 10-year CIP. It doesn't necessarily mean that it got squashed if it was in the CIP.
I'm not gonna speak on that behalf.
Just saying.
Right, but it was discussed that there was layouts and design plans laid out for if financing was available and everybody agreed on it and the stars aligned, a park is to be built there possibly one day in the future.
But you're saying that you cannot apply for a grant for something that's already been put into some other plan?
I don't think that the state's gonna find it beneficial to spend their money on a park. I think that'd be a really hard sell. There's
Correct.
nothing there. Whereas with the historic school, there's something to improve upon.
Yeah, you're doing apples and oranges here. I mean, that pond is just gonna be there forever.
Yes,
The thing
it's,
down is educational tool, as he said, in Homosassa, and it needs upkeep and everything else.
Well, why does anybody care about that pond being there then?
Huh?
Why does anybody care about that pond being there?
Water recharge.
Cause I grew up with it.
all right,
My
moving forward.
grandfather grew up with it. You know, I mean, it's part of the history of Lecanto.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Make it something that somebody wants to go visit or see to make it valuable to
Well-
people that are coming in. I mean, and just, so, well, it's just a little thing of water.
It's not a little thing, it's pretty good size, but I am taking all the plaques that are from the Davis Family Trust that are across the street from the cemetery. And they had, and Kathy worked on these great big plaques, and I'm in the process of moving them over to the cemetery. And you can walk through the cemetery, and it explains about Lecanto, it explains about John Pike Morrison, and it explains about Morrison Pond. They are not down there at the pond, and be all honest, only during the dead of winter, after we've had a freeze or something, I take all my grandkids and we go walking around it. But right now, it's overgrown, it's hard to walk around, and at one time, they wanted to have a walkway, but still, it could still be alive, farther down the road. So,
We're gonna move
yeah, I
forward.
was asking that just more like a theory question, and with land that the county owns, you know what I mean? And nobody's gonna
Yeah,
develop
the
it.
state is more interested in preserving and education as opposed to creating.
Right.
And with the amount of, I think there's 75 or 82 CLGs in the state now.
How many?
I think 72 to 80, 75 to 82 municipalities and cities and such. All these CLGs are fighting for the same money. So when the applications go in and they start looking at applications, do we want to restore something or build a bench at a water feature?
Gotcha. I
So
gotcha.
that's in part why I'm saying I don't think that we can convince the state to put a park bench up here, but we can convince them to replace glass at the
The pond
Homestead
still
Park.
has fish in it.
All right, let's, any other questions, comments about historical preservation?
Yeah,
Frogs too?
See none, hear none, moving forward. Review of the Florida Sunshine Law.
oh, yeah.
I'm gonna hit this one again real quick. Any questions? There should be a paper in here, I believe.
Yes, right here, next to the last.
You got two. One is stapled.
Looks like this.
And this is again the review and highlight of the Sunshine Law. And being that we are advisors for the county, we do fall under Sunshine Law requirements. Basically, don't talk to each other about anything of historical significance or items that may come before the board for discussion. I don't know how often y'all hang out together outside of here.
There, it gets a little sticky here. Because I serve on the board at the Historical Society as a board of director, and so does Cynthia. So we're just gonna have to be real careful about what we discuss, but I don't see a problem. We have to report to the board, Historical Society, what we do here. But I think there's not a problem as long as it's old business, like,
If you're giving an update on stuff that has happening at previous meetings with the historical resource board that you serve on, as long as you two are not carrying on conversation outside of that board meeting room regarding things that are going in front of that board. So you just have to keep that separate with the understanding that you're providing updates to this advisory board.
so we report, what we've been reporting is like, the agenda, you know, in our report is Historical Resource Advisory to the Citrus County Historical Society, the agenda. And then if anybody wanted to talk about further an item that was on that agenda, probably one of us will have to be excused,
Yes,
is my thinking.
yes.
You'll have to
Excuse-
recuse yourself from the meeting while the other one gives the update.
Okay,
You can say that a house has come before the advisory board for a permit for a new roof. You can say that, no issue.
right. But-
Mr. Jones says, well, what kind of roof is that? Now someone must excuse himself. Because you're discussing something that will be discussed again.
Right.
Something that a decision has not been made on, something that will come before the board for discussion. We're discussing a new roof, that's great. What kind of roof? Excuse me, gotta go. one of you will have to excuse yourself at that point so that you're not a part of the conversation.
I understand.
Questions, comments? Ready to kill me yet? Sorry for the boredom. Policy, procedure, due process. Trying to keep everybody out of trouble. Any questions?
I would add this about the sunshine law here. That includes emails.
Yes, when you respond to emails, do not respond all. Any email from the HRAB, Historical Resource Advisory Board, from Ms. Easton, you're not gonna get any from me. Do not respond all. Respond only to sender, please. You respond all, you're communicating. Then everybody's gonna hear the response. And that is a violation of sunshine law. Could be, I'm sorry, that could be, depending on what's in the email. So just don't respond all, only respond to the sender.
And there's a good outline in the stapled packet, tells you what your do's and don'ts are. What kind of discussions are covered, the liaison's role, the constitutional right. So please take a moment to overlook that, and then if you have any questions regarding that. I can always invite the county attorney to come and go over that a little more in detail at a future meeting if you feel the need to.
This looks clear.
Okay?
Just pretty cut and dry, just don't do it.
That's all I got, I'm out of here.
All right.
Better to move on to historical Hernando School update.
Yes, sir. The update on this school is, I'm gonna kind of give like a little bit of a background on it real quick. The historic school, is a project that was taken under in the 1990s, actually. It was voted surplus property by the school board, and, it's been a school site since the late 1800s. That school is not that old. There was a school there prior to that. It was a wooden school. But the brick school that's there now was, the paperwork was started in the 1930s. It was completed in the 1940s as a WPA project. And it has been declared as a site for historical significance through the State Department. And it's been a project of the Hernando Heritage Council and the Historical Society. And funds have been raised and grants have been received. And I would say, most of the major work has been done on the building. And now it needs probably one more grant to get finished. That grant application was put forth before the county commission here, I wanna say about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, it was turned down. Time goes by, I think it's in that time period. It was turned down, we had a lot of new commissioners come on board, and there was one commissioner that, had been on the board quite some time, and he said and led the other commissioners in the opposite direction of approving that. So, where we're at today is needing one more grant. It's been used most recently for a senior program, and the senior program has left the building, and so now the building is vacant again, needing that one more grant to finish it. It's a lot of looks inside that needs to be completed, the floors and the walls, and I think the air conditioner needs to be looked at again. But the county, I have a meeting coming up with some county staffers soon, and there's a group that would like to go into the building, and the group is a recovery group. We're gonna find out their plan, but I just wanted to keep this board abreast of what's happening and where the historic school is at today. So definitely, I would like to see another grant happen and get the building completed. It's time that it, that it gets completed. I was really, let down last time that the grant wasn't approved by the county commission, but we do have commissioners on there today that I've talked with that are very pro about the building. And, we'll find out more as to what the recovery group that wants to go in there. It sounds like they may want to help with some of the, they called it restoration, remodeling, but we need, to meet with them to make sure that they understand that it's a historic building and it needs to be restored, under the guidelines of the statutes that the State Department puts out for the historic preservation. So that's kind of an update on the old school.
I know my brother worked on that quite a long time with everybody,
Right,
John Garanon.
Yeah.
So that was one of his big things.
and I'll, after the meeting, I meet with the county and the recovery group. And after I meet with these two groups, I'll report back, updated information of what I find out.
Okay. Sounds great. Is anybody out there? Well, we don't have anybody open to the public. We have some staff comments.
I had my comments.
Okay,
You'll probably tired of
Sure.
hearing me.
okay. Upcoming meeting. When is that going to be? Oh, we got a staff?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. Let's see, I concur with Candace on the historic Hernando School, and I just wanted to make a comment and note that I think it's a great idea to try to move forward with it. $1.2 million has already been put into the project by the county, Hernando, the society, and donors. So, I think moving forward with that project, instead of, $1.2 million is a lot of dollars to not finish the project. Another thing was, I know that when the HRAB board was first started, one of the reasons was, or one of their goals or missions, and we can talk about this more when that comes up next time, but it was that anything that pertained to a historic structure, if there was going to be work done on a county-owned historic structure, that those things were supposed to come before the HRAB board. And I wanted to make sure that that was still in effect. And then the last thing I wanted to say has to do with something that Candy was talking about in terms of, some of the confusions about historic preservation. There's like 5 levels of historic preservation, 4 levels of historic preservation. Of course, one is preservation itself, and the example that I like to use, and some of you have maybe already heard it from me, but the example I like to use for true preservation is the Hale Plantation home up in just west of Gainesville, not too far, before Alachua, before Archer for sure. That's a true example of historic preservation in the sense that it was taken back to no plumbing, no electricity, plaster walls on pier foundations. They have a visitor center to the site that has all the modern conveniences that you might need when you visit the site. The second and third are restoration and rehabilitation. And those 2 levels of preservation are what we did on the historic courthouse. Restoration in the sense that the building was restored to a certain period of time. The time from which it was built, 1911-12, until about 1925. Rehabilitation in the sense that all the modern conveniences were upgraded in the building or put in, and so that it could be used as a museum and people could visit it. And then the final one is reconstruction. And my idea, or not my idea, or my example of reconstruction, my favorite reconstruction example is the San Luis Mission site up in Tallahassee, where they recreated a council house that would house 1,600 Appalachia Native Americans that would come there for ceremonial and economic purposes. So that's my favorite one under reconstruction. It was all based upon archaeological things and so on. Sometimes you see other things like, well, for example, the Valerie Theater. They did a wonderful job, but really that has nothing to do with historic preservation. Because even though at some particular point in time in the 60s and 70s in Inverness, they wanted every little red brick building to look like Art Deco. So they came in and they stuccoed over it, they painted it, and they put those little square glass block windows in the buildings. And so whenever you see any of that, Coca-Cola building being one, and several others downtown, it's not something that would have been there at the time that it was built. And so, you know, that's something totally different. It's not anything to do with historic preservation. But they did an excellent job. It looks wonderful, but it's not really historic preservation. So I think as we think about some of the projects that may come before us, if we keep those things in mind, and that there's another big topic that I'm not going to say anything about, just to say it, and that's compatibility. Compatibility is a big thing in historic preservation, so if anybody wants to, you know, you have plenty of time at night and you can't go to sleep, just Google it. You can find probably all you want about compatibility. And that's all I want to say. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Did you say compatibility?
Compatibility, yes. You
Compatibility.
might have to dig a little
Does
bit deep.
anybody else on the board have anything to say?
I will say one more thing.
All right.
I apologize for not being at the last meeting. I also serve on the board for the Citrus County Fair Association. We lost our longtime fair manager, and April 1st was the last day of the fair, and I had to step up to the plate and do some things there that were called for, so I apologize for missing the last meeting.
Thank you. Okay, upcoming meeting announcement.
Our next meeting is scheduled for August the 5th, which is a Monday, at 4 p.m. here in room 166.
August 6th?
August 5th,
5th.
5.
Okay, let me-
Monday.
That's only 2 months. I thought we were 3 months.
We were working on 3 months, but we were kind of unsure, and we went through and picked out some dates that the meeting room was available, and those were the dates from the first unofficial meeting.
And so August, what was the date?
5.
5.
And bring your goal
And that'll be a
setting
goal setting,
recommendations.
yes.
Yep. I think that's a great idea, because while we were sitting here, I looked up the deadlines for the grants, small matching. The next one is, the application opens on April the 1st, I think it is. They're due on June 1st, no, yeah, June 1st. Well, check this out, Mark, when you have a chance, or give me 1 second, I'll find it here. But basically, the bottom line is that the time is less than a year. And it'll come up fast, is basically the bottom line, and,
They just closed it.
yeah, April.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
closed it.
And then the funding would be available as of July 1st.
Correct.
That next legislative
Right.
session. But it'll come up fast.
Yes,
All
it
right,
will.
under a member's guide to motion, adjourn meeting.
Need a motion,
I know, I move to adjourn.
okay?
Second,
Do I have a second?
yes.
Okay. Great. Another 3 years, I'll have this down pat.
We'll get out our notes. We'll look at our notes.
Okay. And under the sunshine law, I don't want to see anybody at happy hour.
You can discuss